Hello, everyone, and welcome to another new conversation on our YouTube platform. And today we are delighted to welcome Veda Stram from the US, who is part of the All Creatures website. And particularly we want to talk about her vegan guide on the All Creatures website, which we will link on the conversation, and about her work with All Creatures. So welcome, Veda, and pleased to have you along.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm very proud of this guide. I've been vegan almost 34 years, and it's a great piece of work. And I just want to, it's free. I want to get it out there as far and wide as we can.
Let's start with All Creatures. Tell us about what All Creatures is, what it does, and for those who are unfamiliar with it, and what you do within it.
Okay, it's all-creatures.org, and Frank Hoffman is a pastor, and in the mid-60s or mid-90s, he discovered animal rights and veganism and became very frustrated with his fellow clergy people and his parishioners who just wouldn't consider animal rights or veganism. So he went to web school and designed allcreatures.org. So it starts in about 96. So it's this huge archival site. There's 300,000 pages or so, and we keep adding. It's just the history from 96. And one of the great privileges we have is we get written permission from organizations and individuals to reprint their work. So we only put on the site what we have permission to reprint. And we can print anything we want. I have the freedom to do any animal rights, vegan articles I want. Frank does a new sermon every week, which he hasn't done for a few years, but there's a huge sermon archive that's all animal liberation, vegan, Christian based. And our new executive director, Tams Nicholson, is just doing wonderful. She's just a great director. And we're moving into a whole new phase for All Creatures that is going to make us much more social media present, which we haven't been. I'm an old person and I prefer websites.
Oh,
so
people here, Veda, don't worry about that.
So social media is like, I have Facebook, but I'd rather spend time sharing information that I think is valuable, and the depth and breadth of the horrors we inflict on animals.
Yeah.
Can
I just ask you? I mean, why a faith-based approach? Is there something which you feel is particularly important about having a faith-based approach to veganism?
Well, yeah, it was founded by a pastor who wanted to reach out to believers. Mm-hmm. And I say that I'm not a believer. And I believe that in order to get this really to happen, we need to appeal. And that's why I'm really proud to be here. We need to appeal to people who are believers. Yeah. And we need to address their concerns for animals from the point of view of, from their religious point of view. And that's why I think it's so valuable to have this site. And I think it's crucial because most people in the world are believers. They claim to be believers. They claim to believe in something. And I think it's important for us to reach out to them and not exclude them. And whatever it is in this movement that has so many people be anti-religion and actually rude, in social media about people of faith, I wrote a little statement that I put on people's Facebook page now and then when they start bashing religion. I say, when you judge, demean, ridicule, and attack religious people, you just might be bashing, demeaning, belittling great animal liberation vegan activists. I'm an atheist who knows hundreds of animal liberation vegan activists who happen to believe in lots of things I don't believe in. Please use your energies to fight for the animals. Yeah. And I've had some nice responses to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great shame, I think, and clearly you're coming from the same direction, that so many people who believe strongly in things actually use them to exclude others.
Yes, very human, I think.
Well,
I
yeah,
don't,
that's
I don't
true.
think I don't think a lot of mice do that, you know, but it's a huge site, and we do a great newsletter every week that people should subscribe to, because I get to include, there's probably 15 to 30 different articles and alerts and stories and poems in every newsletter. It's a great cross section of a lot of what's going on for animals all over the world.
Yeah, and we, the links will be on the conversation. Please go and visit All Creatures. But let's talk specifically about the guide that you've produced, Veda, because it is a very comprehensive work. It covers a lot of ground. It combines both practical tips and advice and help, assistance for those who want to become vegan, alongside a lot of argument about why you should be vegan, and presumably, which is there not so much for the people who want to be vegan, but for them to use on friends and family. So why did you decide to make it that kind of way?
Well, I became an activist in April '88. And at that time, what we were working on, I was in Southern California, we were working on getting the animals out of labs, anti-vivisection, and fur. And by the way, don't eat them. It was just this little side issue, actually. And that was, and in '89, I actually rescued a little pigeon who couldn't fly, who lived with me. And one morning I woke up and took the blanket off of her cage where she slept at night. And she stretched one wing and then her foot and another wing and another foot. And I thought, oh my God, hens in cages. So I was vegan, like that. And I heard bits and pieces, but mostly it was vivisection and fur, but that did it. So dairy was obviously next. And so that was January of '89. And by '92, I was so sick of hearing, well, what do I eat? And I would say, have you had a banana? Oh, I could never eat vegan food. I said, well, here's an apple, and I finally got off my high horse and realized people really didn't know what to eat, that it's so cultural, it's so embedded, it's so tradition, it's so easy, and it's so advertised. So I just started asking people, what do they eat? Asking vegans, what do you eat? What do you eat? And I put my first version together in '92, and every few years I would upgrade it. And what I did was I would print 50 or 100 at a time and just give them away. And every few years it'd be more new products and more new products. And then I met David Hoey, who does great vegan memes on Facebook. And we started talking about my guide. And so this last version is a collaboration between the two of us. And he had a lot of information already on his website, and I had a lot of information. So we have hundreds of products and links to the companies where you can either buy them or order them. And mostly my vegan journey, because I think it's important to see how different we all are, how we got here. That's one of my favorite things, is to read the anthologies from all kinds of people, because it isn't like we're all the same. It's not a cult that we all join, and it's important for people to know that. So the guide is really, and there's 3 sections also that are impacts of eating animals on animals, impacts of eating animals on the environment, impacts of eating animals on human health. And I'm in this for the animals. So that's why it's what to eat when you don't eat animals. I'm sorry that so much now is addressed as plant-based. It's not vegan. They're 2 completely different worlds in so many ways. And veganism is, for me, about kindness and generosity and being aware of the consequences of your action, of every action. Everything we do has a consequence. And it's just important for the animal lovers to stop eating them. Why pet one and eat the other,
Yeah, I actually gave or sent the PDF to my two daughters, and one of the things that you're very upfront about in the guide, and you're very honest about your approach to this, is that you say, I don't like cooking. And it's really very much based on products which are available from various different sources, which you've researched and looked at yourself, which I think is important. We'll come back to that. But one of my daughters is very much takes a very much different approach to that in terms of believing that you start with veg and fruit and you cook that and you don't use product from anybody, right. No matter what it is. Right. And you know, one of the things that she immediately said about it was that, well, you know, how do you know what's in the product? And secondly, because you've taken that approach, it becomes a very US-based document, because most of those products are simply not available over here in the UK or in Europe. So firstly, how do you know the products are vegan? And we'll talk more about, you know, the way in which products are processed in a minute. But also, have you thought about extending this? I mean, you mentioned there are lots and lots of good vegan websites and cookbooks out there on the internet. Have you thought about kind of like extending this so that people can actually cook from fresh rather than using product?
Well, that's not how I eat. Yeah, and what I wanted, literally, I mean, I microwave it, fry it up in vegan butter, or bake it. You know, yeah. I don't like. I couldn't even begin to make lasagna or dumplings. I mean, that's cooking. You know, so my point in it was to see how easy it can be. And I've known so many people who were very, very happy to find the quote vegan alternatives, and then they went on to become amazing vegan chefs. You know, but it's trying to get people who literally don't know what to eat to show them how easy it is. And I could extend it, but I wouldn't be able to do it. You know, it's like, I love the easy vegan cheesecake recipe with 19 ingredients. I'm going, you know, and some people like to do that. I have a theory that I can't prove, and I don't know if anybody's working on it, but I really believe it's more important for your health what you don't put in your body than what you do.
Yep.
And I think when people go vegan, it isn't that they started eating X, Y, or Z. It's they stopped eating poison and flesh and all the drugs and hormones in this food. And also, they stopped eating rage. These animals are upset every minute of their lives until they're killed. And that was one of the things when I went vegan, was the best thing that happens to them is that they die. And for somebody who loves animals, that was just like horrifying to realize that. And I really think it's more important what you don't eat. I'm 76. I'm very healthy. I can do anything I want to do. I've been vegan almost 34 years. And if I go to somebody's house and they cook some great, you know, vegan fancy thing, I love it. But I don't have an interest in that. But maybe we could add a paragraph. You know, I mentioned in there, if you want to go learn to be a great vegan chef, do that. You know, and David found this list of 300 fruits.
Oh, you know? Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
just like, yeah, you know, he contributed so much to that, you know, and it was like, oh, what's this? Potatoes. Yeah. I mean, there's, you know, how many kinds of potatoes are there? Yeah. How many kinds of rice? You know, you go into a regular grocery store, there's probably at least 10 or 12 kinds of rice in the regular supermarket, but everybody buys the same one all the time. So that's why I put menus, you know, eat these 3 things, eat these. So yeah, and I appreciate that. And there are a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine who criticize that this is for transitioning, is what they say. This is for people who first go vegan, and, you know, to get them into the habit of not eating animals. And then later they'll become vegan chefs, or, you know, do what they do. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I understand it. Yeah, and it's not me.
Well, no, exactly. I can absolutely appreciate where you're coming from in the fact that, you know, you can take your document and it's just a question of going out and buying the stuff. And as you say, sticking it in the microwave, or very basic cooking. You don't need to actually be very into the ingredients or into cooking in order to eat with your guide, which is perfectly understandable. Do you get any response from people in Europe, in other parts of the world, who would like to have a guide like that with local product in it?
Not yet. I mean, I understand that's a reality, but I haven't
Yeah.
had any particular requests about it. If somebody wanted to take it and redo it and stick in those products, fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's not copyrighted.
Yeah.
You know, it is free. If people want to take whatever piece and part of it they want, if it's useful for them, please do that. You know, but it's just, you know, I just wanted people to see how much food there is.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. And, I mean, one of the other things as well is that, again, my daughter raised this, because you mentioned sugar and how sugar, you need to avoid sugar because it's they use bone char in the manufactured sugar, which actually isn't true in the UK because that's banned. So, you know, I mean, again, the different regulations over production make it different in other parts of the world as well.
Right.
And one of the things that my daughter is always going on about is that there, and you mentioned it in your guide as well, is that there are so many products out there which you wouldn't think have any animal product in, but they do. And how do you avoid that? You know, I mean, even if you read the ingredients, some of the things on, you know, I mean, I've bought stuff and she said, well, you can't eat that, that's got animal product in it, it's got it here. How do you know?
Yeah. You just, first of all, I still read labels.
Yes.
And I read labels because even if there's something that I've liked, that I've been using for years, they'll all of a sudden decide to add butter.
Yeah.
The company. And so we tried our best. And what we can do is we have to trust the websites. You know, we have to trust the websites and trust other vegans. Yeah. And so we're not going to stake my kitties' lives that, you know, every product in there is 100%. What's vegan anyway? You know, I mean, the packaging is like obscene.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
You know, so there's another, you know, you can't be 100% vegan is really true.
Yeah.
But you can pick food that that you can pretty much be certain you didn't pay somebody to torture an animal to get that product. And, you know, we can talk about the fleas in the plants and, you know, but I think people know, people now know about animal sentience. This is out there in the world enough compared to when I started, that the argument and the health conversation is out there. People now know it. And the denial for me on the part of the environmentalists is really the worst for me. It's right in their face. I mean, every day the weather is just insane. The climate it's crisis beyond belief. And I'm not real optimistic. We would have to have people stop eating animals today. We would have to stop breeding them today. We would have to stop supplying the amount of money that these industries get. I think if you've heard of like transformation and the rancher advocacy program, transitioning animal farmers to be plant farmers, those are amazing projects. And I forget what it's called in the US government, the Farm Bill comes up, I think, every 5 years. And right now it's about $38 billion in subsidies. The percentage of that goes to people growing plants for people to eat is 1%. And if you are raising pigs to be food, that you're subsidized for buying the piglets, you're subsidized for the cages and the crates, you're subsidized for the food, you're subsidized for transporting them to slaughter. So the whole thing is just, it's money, money, money. And there's so much money involved. And I call it just one paw in front of the other. Because I don't see I just don't see people giving up a lot of what they like. And so if we can appeal to people's faith, if we can appeal to people's sense of decency, if we can appeal to their animal lovingness, we need to try everything.
Mm.
And we need to get as many avenues as we can for as many people. So we have to speak to how people are living.
Yeah.
And so that was really, for me, it was like, here, eat this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed, part of the subsidy that you're talking about is subsidy for marketing as well. And you
yeah.
have no subsidy for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah.
Chris, would you like to contribute at this stage?
Yeah, thanks for that, Gerald. And that conversation already is starting with basically food has already moved to all various different aspects of things. And firstly, I fully understand and appreciate the comment that Veda made earlier at the start about animal welfare movement, animal rights movement, excluding people of faith for whatever reason. It's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers, and it's something I'm up against all the time. Not all the time, but you know, regularly, especially people who are new to CCA. They have some sort of inbuilt aversion. I don't know what it is. They think they're right on with their animal welfare act, animal right activism, but they don't want to engage with people of faith. And when I said to them, well, aren't you about changing people's behaviour? And they say, yeah. I say, well, 4 out of 5 people on this planet associate in some way, loosely or more firmly, with a faith. And if you want to exclude 4/5 of the world, you're not going to get very far.
Right.
And when they hear that, they sort of, well, a light bulb comes on. Not in everything, but in lots of cases. And the thing is, again, we're talking about labelling, which is problematic. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about packaging. We're talking about different jurisdictions. What we might be applicable in the US may not be even applicable in Western and Europe and the UK, which are very similar to the US in many, many ways, but also dissimilar in other ways. But that's got nothing similarity with a middle of rural Africa, where it's a completely different life to it is in Boston, Massachusetts, or New York, or London, or Paris, or whatever else the song used to sing about. The New York, Paris, whatever that song was, I remember. And you haven't got that in the middle of Masaka Diocese in Uganda, where we try and work as well. All these things are very, very critical because we live in an unjust world, frankly. And there's always somebody trying to pull the wool over your eyes, whether it is about labeling, and you can't always believe what you read on a label, even if the best way in the world and the best regulation. We've had terrible examples in Europe about people buying what they think are fur-free products actually have fur in them. You mentioned fur early on, and that's just one example. The food industry is even more difficult. And all we can hope for is by doing what Veda does with your work and what we do, is to try and help the individual make the best choices they can make if they want to follow these paths. And we can't always guarantee that whatever it is they buy off the shelf or whatever they're consuming is totally vegan or anything else, because the world is unjust. And there's always somebody who will try and pull the wool over your eyes, and use that expression. There's 20 sheep out there. It's true. But I mean, what we do, or I think in the animal welfare, animal rights, animal advocacy world, whichever expression people prefer to use, is we do our best to try and help people to make their choices. Because at the end of the day, it's about individuals making their change in their lives. Of course, we do want, governments like the United States government in particular, because it's so powerful, or the Chinese government, or even, dare I say it, governments of other places, to make better laws, to give those subsidies for veganism and for other things. These billions of pounds that we hear about in subsidy.
Yeah.
And we want corporations to change their behavior. But end of the day, it's giving the information to individuals so they can make hopefully decisions for themselves and for animals. It's not easy. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be simple. And it's like pushing that proverbial boulder up the mountain. You know, you keep pushing and pushing, and you get to the top and it comes down again. You have to start all over again. And it's frustrating and it's difficult. But we are making progress. And that is one of the things I would say. I mean, just in the world of veganism, and I understand your dilemma about plant-based. In the UK now, everything is plant-based.
Yeah.
And clearly that's not quite the same thing.
No.
Because basically it's putting the emphasis on human consumption rather than animal meat.
It's good for me. It's good for me.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's all these things. But having said that, I'm happier that the supermarkets are pushing plant-based than what they were pushing before 5 or 6 years ago. So there's understanding, and people's understanding takes some time. But it's definitely a movement in our direction, whether it's on diet or any other aspects of animal welfare, animal advocacy. And Gerald knows this, but I was at a conference yesterday, and the conference was with the UK World of Horses. It was at the horsey community in the UK. And there are a lot of issues in the horsey community, sport being a big one. And we still have horrible racing in the UK.
Right.
But there's other issues. But at least that community is starting to think about problems of horse welfare, even though, you know, they're not on the level that I would like them to be on yet. But they're now thinking, and their conference interestingly was called Use and Abuse. And, you know, and they're actually starting to think about these concepts. It took them a long time to get there. And they're still in language that I think is the irony. I heard some language being used about, oh, we still need to show who the horse is the master, and we have to, you know, and all this sort of stuff, you know.
Right.
But they were trying their best, even though, you know. So it's a very unlevel playing field. But and I think diet, and I think you hinted at the start, Veda, about actually saying as much, is that the amount of animal abuse, the animal suffering in diet far outweighs the number of animals compared to any other, basically. You know, there are billions and billions of animals, both on land and in water, that suffer because of our wish to eat them. Is far outweighs all the other issues, although the other issues are often more emotional.
It's beyond belief. I mean, it truly, and when I meet people who are fairly new, there's something that happens for a lot of people. There's a moment where you know what your life is going to be about, where it just shifts. And I don't know if it's a video you saw or a book you read or something somebody said, but there's a point for a lot of activists in all domains, in all areas of social justice. There's a moment where you go, oh, now I know this is what I'm committed to. This is what I want to work on. This is going to be really, really important for me. And what I think happens to a lot of people is we think that moment, whatever that physical occurrence was for us, is what's going to work for everybody else. So if you saw a video, then you become insane about showing videos everywhere. And that's all you do is you show videos and show videos. I don't know how to get through to people. After all these years and everything I've tried, it's sort of like, okay, I'll try this. How about this? How about, you know, what about monkeys? What about zoos? What about food? And, you know, people get it when they get it. And then they take action on it or not. And I want to just offer, that's why I love All Creatures, being able to post all these different kinds of activism. And we also have a whole section of a lot of articles on avoiding burnout. And, you know, that's really crucial because people have no idea what we're talking about. And like I tell people too, I've been doing this pretty much full time for almost 30 years. And I would say 3 or 4 times a week, I hear of some new horror to inflict on animals that I never heard of. And I got used to that about 20 years ago, but I'm still stunned. And every once in a while, I'm just left completely brokenhearted and deluded. But we have to do something, is how I see it. I have to do something. So this is an avenue that I've picked. I call myself an armchair activist. I don't want to go to jail. I'm afraid, this fur farm guy is going to shoot me. So when I was a new activist, for me, it was like, okay, I'm not going to do those things. So I probably won't ever be able to be an activist. And then I thought, what are my talents? What are the things that I'm good at, that I'm aware of, that I can use for the animals? And that's what I've been doing. And everybody's not going to do everything. But when you're new, try everything, and if you come into the movement as an activist and your focus is on fur, and you do that for 5 years, and you just start to feel burned out, go work on another issue. I have seen that be very effective for lots of people, because you get so drowned in the details of the horror that you can't see your way out anymore. So go do something else, and it's just to give people. I did do another booklet that I'll send a link to, some things I wish someone had told me when I was new to activism.
Yeah.
And it's just, and this and this and this and this, and because it's packed full, because it just, nobody told us this years ago, that be prepared for this and handle this. The other thing I want to say is, I think it's really important, if you're doing this with a lot of your time, this is a lot of what your life is spent on, is this movement, this animal liberation vegan thing, you need to vacate. And what I do is 7 o'clock at night, waterbed, kitties, Netflix, no phone, no computer. I vacate every night, and I wake up in the morning, I go to work at 9. But I learned that a long time ago. It's just too horrible to be drowning in it. And that's what people tend to do. You're not going to save them all. It's just the heartbreak. There's millions who are going to die before I do, and there's nothing I can do about them.
You're absolutely right, Veda. And poor old Gerald, I've been working him to death recently. He needs to do some vacation. I think he keeps getting emails and phone calls from me, and he needs to go and watch some Netflix tonight, I think, after this. But one of the things,
we'll find anything decent on it.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm not responsible for Netflix.
Indeed.
I'm certainly not responsible for Twitter with Elon Musk, but we'll pass on that very quickly. That'll probably date this interview when people watch it. Say, what was that about, Elon Musk?
Yeah, really. What was it?
Anyway,
it would be nice. It would be nice if we can say Elon who someday.
But the point you made is very good about how people get involved in the movement, and this is not an intellectual thing. It's an emotional thing. People get emotionally involved, whether it's something, as you say, they see, or they might read, or they might hear, or someone might mention to them, or they might just see, And our mutual friend, yours and mine, Kim Stallwood, always talks about when he went as a young man, worked in an abattoir, and it was it shocked him, and he converted him overnight. In effect, his experience as a young man, Kim talked about that a lot.
Yeah,
how he worked there, and the horror of what he saw at that place made him go vegan overnight, and that was in the 1970s.
Right.
I think when Kim did that. So it is an emotional thing more than you don't intellectualize. Think, oh right, today I just I've read Plato or something. I don't know what the hell. But how dare I say I've read a modern animal liberation expert, and I'm suddenly now I get that. It's an emotional thing that people get, and as you rightly say, we're all I'm quoting Monty Python. We're all individuals. And we all different things get us in different ways, whether it's what we like watching on Netflix or whatever it is. And, it's an emotional thing. So we just have to be there to help people and give them the information and show them the video, maybe put them to a talk, whatever it is. And the other thing about the burnout, it is very, very, this is a hard road.
Yeah.
Hard road, because the horror, as you rightly say, that the horrors, we're talking of billions and billions of creatures every year.
Yeah.
and we're only going to save a fraction of those if we can, and maybe convert, inverted commas, a fraction of the human population to feel better about animals. So it's a hard, tough road, and you need to care for yourself as well, as you were saying.
Yeah, I think that vacate is really important. I mean, it's crucial, and it just, I mean, what I'm loving on Netflix, I watch a lot of Korean and Turkish movies, and Indian and Spanish, and it's just fascinating that I just kind of have to turn off my food thing, you know, because all over the world, you know, that's how people hang out together.
You'll have to send Gerald some of your Netflix recommendations. He's obviously.
Oh, okay.
I think we should be saying at this stage, other streaming services are available.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, we're not. This is not sponsored by Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just, it's like how I am with technology. Is that's the first one somebody told me about, and I said, okay, I'm set. You know, and then I see ads all the time for things. I have no idea what they're talking about. You know, I don't have a smartphone. That's another thing. I don't text. You want to reach me, you email me or you call me. Remember these? You know, and I have a lot of people tell me that texting drives them crazy. I said, well, get rid of the phone. And they look at me like, you know, how do you live like that?
You've never had to live with WhatsApp. You should be grateful for that.
What's that?
WhatsApp. WhatsApp indeed. WhatsApp.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Other messenger services are also available.
Oh, yeah.
I got a message on Facebook in the message thing. I think that's a DM, a direct message. Is that what that is? Anyway, it said click here, and I thought, God, should I click it? Am I going to go some weird place? And it was a friend who sent me something, and they actually talked to me. On Facebook. I was like, wow. I started with a typewriter, you know, so.
Yeah, I remember those days, Veda.
Yeah.
Errol started with a quill pen, but anyway, we'll move on.
To get back to...
I started with a selectric typewriter. And when we got the correcting selectric, that was like, oh my God, this is really high tech, you know, so. No, and I've learned just what I need to know to post and print pictures and text on all creatures. I know nothing about web design. I couldn't, you know, nothing, but I'm like a little parrot. I can just do all this stuff rote. And if there's 10 steps to do something and I get distracted at 3, I have to start over. It's just so not natural to me, this whole technology thing. The coding is like, you know, really illogical.
Can we return to the guide?
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, one of the things that, as I said at the beginning, that struck me about the guide is there's the food aspects to it, and then you have a lot of material in there about why you should be vegan. You mentioned that the effects on health, the effects on the environment, the effects on animals of eating flesh, and I thought that was really interesting because one of the things, and I think you've answered this to a certain extent with what you said previously, but it kind of like, I was wondering, who is this guide aimed at? Is it aimed at people who are already vegans? Well, in that case, why have we got all these arguments? Or is it people who are coming to veganism, or is it people who are thinking about becoming vegans? Where are you thinking? I mean, who are you aiming this at?
I'm aiming it, I started it, and still, even from 92, pretty much it's for people who either are thinking about it, or they know they should, or they're confronted with, you know, what to eat. You know, it's literally, and I've had lots of longtime vegan activists, you know, thank me for all the products. I mean, they didn't even know this stuff was out there, which is, you know, and if you're trying to get your neighbors to go vegan, you know, throw a veggie burger on the grill. You know, it's that way. But it really is, if you have any concern for animals, you need to stop eating. And you know, it's just, you cannot continue to do this. The difference between vegetarian and vegan is like this compared to this.
Yeah.
I think 99% of the animals abused for food are cows for milk and goats for milk and chickens for eggs.
Mhm.
It doesn't even compare. It's a drop. Vegetarianism is like a drop in the bucket. It really is, for the number of animals. And the other thing is, it's all so connected. It's not an accident that I don't know if it was Dr. Clapper or one of the vegan doctors years ago said, you never find broccoli in the heart valve.
Yes.
It's not an accident that people are so sick from eating all this. It's not an accident that I think, again, my theory about the rage that people eat. We're in our fourth generation now, third generation of people eating these. When is it, like the old days? You used to have meat on Sunday or something. Well, that's long gone. But it's not an accident that's killing the planet.
Well, I think one of the important things about that is the way in which diet affects the kind of diseases which are prevalent around the world. So, we in Western societies, things like cancer and heart disease are major killers. Not so when you go to Africa, particularly with things like heart disease, because the diet is different. And, I think that's an important message to get out there. I mean, one of the things that interests me again about the guide is in terms of the kind of arguments you're putting in there. I mean, you've got section on health, section on the environment, section on the effect on animals. They are about kind of arguments which people can take from the guide and then use. And again, you have, I think I'm right in saying you have quite a few links in there to other sources and so on. I mean, you have links to scientific sources and things of that nature. And is this an activist's manual?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you send somebody a link, I don't care who they are, they'll eventually click on it. Pretty much you can count on that event. They might kind of have an idea what it is, so they'll avoid it for a while, but eventually they'll click on it.
I think many people struggle to click on all the links in your guide, Veda. There are a lot of them.
We're updating it every 3 months because there's that many products changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like in the this one that will come out in a couple of weeks, I wanted to add like a quote from Damian Mander, who's the International Anti-Poaching Organization. And this guy, ex-soldier and macho and, help training the anti-poaching people. And, he just has these great statements, and that's going to appeal to who it appeals to, so it's like I find new things for the updates, but there's something about the updates. Because like I say, some product, all of a sudden there'll be a company that starts putting butter and stuff.
Yeah.
For no reason at all. We did get word from Amy's is one company that does a lot of products. They have no intention. They have half vegan and half vegetarian. They have no intention of being vegan.
Yeah.
So we didn't include them. If they put in writing, they have no intention, then they're not on our side. They're not on the animal side. But I just think there's like you say, yes, it's an activist guide. Your friends don't know what to eat. Here's a link. Go to the PDF. And the same with all the quotes on health and environment. It's just like I say, it's just not an accident that all of these horrors. I mean, people have no idea what eating animals does to every piece of the planet. Yeah. And I just heard of another horrible thing where they have pregnant horses, artificially pregnant, and they bleed them for a particular hormone that somebody discovered you feed to pigs, and it makes them have bigger litters and more consistent. So it makes the farming more consistent because you can have all that. And it's just like, What are the horse people?
That is just evil.
It is, and
evil. I'll use a religious term. That is just evil.
It is evil. It is one of my favorite gurus used to tell me that evil is that which kills life. That's his description, and I like that. That's what it is. It is just horrible. And where are the horse people? Where are all the horse people when they're complaining about all animals being rounded up? These horrible roundups are just horrific, wild horses. But those websites never talk about the beef ranchers because they don't want to offend their donors. They don't want to offend the horse lovers. And there's one horse group called the Fund for Horses that I know of that has a vegan advocate from your plate section.
Mm-hmm.
But the other, the same with the people protecting the bison in Yellowstone. If the bison wander across this fence, then the ranchers kill them. But they never talk about the beef ranchers. Mm-hmm. And so it's so much of the speciesism is not, for me, just humans and animals. It's within the animal workers, animal advocates, that it's more important to talk about the bison than it is to mention the horses.
Well, I think the important thing, and there are a number of important things there. All of this is interrelated. As soon as you start eating animals, then you end up creating food for the animals, or doing things which improve the product of the animal, and so on and so forth, which themselves are damaging. So we have not just a problem in terms of animal production, but the intensive farming which is needed to produce food for animals and so on helps to erode the soil that we're using and things of that nature. It's all it. And one of the things, because in some ways your guide and what you said here is quite hard line, Veda. This is it, this is what it is. But it's very difficult to be absolutely purist about this, isn't it? Because some of those companies you mentioned, the companies who produce vegan things, even if they themselves are very dedicated to what they're doing, they may have financial relations, be owned by other companies who are not so interested in this, but are really interested in veganism as a money-making proposition. And one of the things we need to one of the things which has changed is again, we've talked about this, is the fact that nowadays we are talking about veganism in a way which just wasn't the case when I was a child. Vegans were around, but they were kind of like either regarded as health nuts or weirdos of some form. To some extent, maybe people still do. But the point is that now that's become much more mainstream. It's in our supermarkets. It's in on our internet in a way which just wasn't the case before. And what we need to do is to get more people going down this road, more people traveling this line. And I think the important thing about your guide is it's a significant contribution to actually getting people who do not want to be cooking vegetables and doing that for any length of time involved in what is a fairly straightforward way of eating more vegan food.
If I can come in there quickly, Gerald, one of the things you said about when you were a child, and without giving your age away, you saying that veganism was seen as something weird and peculiar. Well, actually, when because I do know how old you are, when we were both children, vegetarianism was seen in that way. Veganism was non-existent, frankly. Certainly was in Manchester. I don't know about anywhere else.
Well, I was in South Devon. It was a different scene.
You're a rural boy compared to other urban lads. But so veganism was just not on the agenda, and vegetarianism was seen as weird and peculiar. People who didn't eat animals it was veggie was seen as weird. And Richard Ryder tells me this a lot about, you know, because Richard was obviously very active in the 70s with his work. And it was seen then as very peculiar when they were talking about diet. And that, we've got to remember that's 50 odd years ago now.
Right.
But the movement has moved very, very quickly. And some people very, very slowly, but also very in that period of time.
Yeah.
And why one, you know, apart from the guide which we're discussing in detail, one of the things I like about all creatures in general, and particularly why I do love the organization, is we're talking of all creatures. We're not talking about that particular set of animals, or we're not talking about one of the things, you know, like save the polar bear or save. When I was growing up as an activist, it was, and I've said this many times, it was save the whale, or it was save the polar bear now, or it was save giant panda. These big totemic campaigns, species extinction issues. We were talking about all creatures, and when I mean all creatures, I don't mean species. I mean individual creatures, and that's why. And you know, it from the smallest to the largest, you know, and we talk about it all the time. So this is why, you know, and I think, dare I say it, it's no coincidence that all creatures and CCA have the faith-based their foundation, because they talk about all creatures, not just certain, you know, cruelty and certain aspects of what happens in the world that humans inflict on other creatures. It's all creatures that inhabit our world with us.
And we're creatures.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, doesn't ignore humans, and that's another thing. When people say to me, "Oh, all you care about is animals," I say, "I care about human animals as well." And they "Oh, I don't want to get that."
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to get that. It's really, you know, I'm not an animal. There was a conference I went to several years ago, and there was philosophers and, you know, different kinds of, none of them vegetarian. And they were all talking about our compassionate link with other creatures, and, you know, the link between this and this, you know, and after 2 days of this, I stood up at the end and I said, look, I'm sorry, but this is all very interesting and esoteric, but if you're still eating animals, this is ridiculous. What's the point of all these wonderful books? And I'm not going to name names, but there's some very famous writers out there that write, and they're quoted a lot for their wonderful compassion for, you know, how humans and species, it's really annoying. You know, it's just annoying. Absolutely. And the other thing I want to say is I'm just looking, just recently I've been thinking, you know, our problem is not, the problem is not speciesism. The problem is others. I think that's where human beings are the worst example of creatures, that our concern for others is so narrow, and there's everything is here and everything else is other. And if I were a better writer, I'd write something that I don't think it's speciesism. I think it's others, because the whole idea of Black Lives Matter and the vegan Black Lives Matter people are always fighting with the Black Lives Matter people, because the vegan Black Lives Matter people, you know, they're interpreted as not paying enough attention, you know, and this is just human. This is just humans, you know, but it's the others. There's, you know, I saw a great, there was a great meme, and it had a man holding a little chick, and they asked some, you know, Maharaji or something, I don't know, how do we treat the others? And the response was, there are no others. And that just, you know, that just really touched me. And for me, I was in a course, and it's in the guide, that it was a course about vision. And our homework one week was to look to see if we'd be willing to take on something we probably couldn't complete in our lifetime. And there were about 40 of us. And the next week we came back, half the people said, no, I'm just going to be a good life and, you know, make a difference and, you know, live my life. And half of us said, no, we want to find something like that. So we started looking. So I was looking, and I saw more horrible videos of rainforest destruction. And this was '88. So, you know, it wasn't the internet, you know. And I just spousal abuse, child abuse, male and female spousal abuse, by the way. And somebody came in and they showed me this brochure. And I was at an animal rights meeting that night. That was outrageous. They cannot get away with this. Who do we call? You know, and then there's that beginning thing that I think is very common for people is, well, I just have to tell people. I'll just give them the facts and show them some pictures. And people get it when we get it. And we heard and saw and felt a lot of things. But what we remember for ourselves mostly is the moment we got it. But we knew a lot of things before. I call myself a speciesist carnivore in my previous life. I ate a lot of parts of cows, pigs, and chickens, but there were other parts of cows, pigs, and chickens that I wouldn't touch. You know, and I never ate lamb. I was very nice. And I never ate deer, and I never had lobster because that was terrible. So it's just, and I remember I was 42. So I had a whole life of eating a bunch of stuff. But it's just, when you find something that really so touches your heart, that you really want to make a difference in that area, then, you know, I do think the guide is an activist guide, because there's so much evidence in there, and so much, you know, David, we debated what kind of pictures, and we went for gorgeous pictures of animals because I wanted people to look them in the eye, you know.
Yeah.
And the problem with a graphic picture is that picture is like 1 second of the camera click. That doesn't account for that animal's whole life like that.
Yeah.
Days and days and months of horror.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have a lot of cute pictures in your guide. I must say that. One of the things, I mean, to pick up on what Chris is saying, I mean, you know, about the polar bear and the whale. I mean, one of the things, of course, back when we were younger, is we thought the polar bear, the whale, whatever, were the only things that were threatened with extinction. Now, everything's threatened with extinction. We're all threatened with extinction, and we are all, to quote a political phrase, in it together. You know, I think if we can get more people reading things like your guide and getting involved with a less destructive lifestyle, then that is a step down the road.
Yes.
On its own, it's not enough, but it is, what's the word I'm looking for? It is necessary, but not sufficient in the scientific term.
Yeah. No, and we all do what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. On that cheery note, I think we need to begin bringing this to an end. Chris, is there anything else you want to add?
No, just say wonderfully thank you to Veda for just on a very topical note, and we're all in it together, and we are in the middle of, again, this will date this recording, we are in the middle of COP27 at present, and I tweeted to John Kerry yesterday, or retweeted one of his things, because he was talking about how he's at COP and he's pushing presidential envoy and this, that. So I said, I hope the US are going to talk about animals at this COP, and left it at that and tweeted back to him. So not surprising, I haven't had a reply from Special Envoy John Kerry yet, but we're doing what we can to influence the Americans as well while we're there. Well,
let's hope they don't serve, you know, buffalo burgers like they have in the past and stuff. You know, I mean, it's just like, it's just obtuse is the word. I wrote the other day, I think we should be called Homo obtuse sapiens from now on. You know, it's just, and I say to people, they kill them. So you can eat them. What else do you need to know? I can tell you a lot, you know. I just want to say one more thing is that having been in the quote, the movement, whatever that is, in the early 90s, the shift went to factory farming away from animal rights. And I think that's been a disaster. And that's why plant-based is so popular. People don't have to confront the animal part of their food, the reality that's inflicted on animals. And I just, I call myself an animal rights vegan.
I think
I'm not a
the
foodie.
you make about plant-based is very well made. Plant-based is everything in the UK now. It's all plant-based. All the range are plant-based, and you're quite right. It's to try and hide the animal suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's a very well valid point you're making there.
And the argument is, well, if we get people to stop eating animals, whatever it takes. But there's, you know, famous celebrities who start vegan food lines and run around in fur coats.
Indeed.
You know, so it's like, yeah, they're plant-based, yeah. But that doesn't count for trillions and trillions of individual little beings. You know, and I don't mean little to diminish them, but, you know, every, that was for me, it was like, I realized, what if every pig is as unique as all my kitties have been? Wow, you know, I can't comprehend that. Truckloads of these,
Indeed.
you know, fishing, trillions of little creatures, you know, it's just, so thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just need to say with the guide, the scan goes to the landing page on All Creatures, where there's a link to the most updated PDF.
Yeah.
So it's best to send people there rather than send them to the current PDF, because that won't be the most updated.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
we'll absolutely
the landing page is important for that.
Okay, so and I would recommend you having a look at Veda's guide, even if you don't have access to the American produce that she focuses on, because a lot of it is about arguments with respect to veganism and why you should be vegan and what veganism means, which are universal. And I think that's you know, something which is important. Thank you, Veda, for being part of this, and thank you for creating the guide, which is really interesting. And if anybody out there wants to do a European UK version, then please feel free, get in touch with us, and we'll have you on to talk about the European version. If anybody wants to do a guide to vegan cooking and menus on the internet, that would be interesting as well. Thank you very much, Veda. Is there anything you want to say in conclusion?
No, just thank you for the opportunity. I really want it out there. I want it out there because I do think it's really good. I've seen lots of literature, and I've sent it to so many people who say, oh yeah, another vegan guide. I said, no, you need to open it. This is not, this is unique. This is one of a kind. And I'm thinking of, you can get little cards, you know, and I had thousands of them printed, so I can send those to people, which is really helpful. And just whatever it takes to get it out there. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I so appreciate your work. You know,
our pleasure, and thank you for creating it, because that's what's important. And it is an activist guide. So, you know, go and have a look at it, and I hope you enjoy it. So thank you, Veda.
Thank you,
Chris. That's it from this conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. A very wide-ranging conversation. You know, it covered not just vegan, but lots of other aspects as well. No product placement is intended in this in this conversation, I should say. But thank you very much for watching it, and I hope you'll be back to visit us again for another conversation on our YouTube platform. Thank you.
Thank you.